Had some time now to reflect on Iowa State's first loss, and I think the best way to sum up how I feel about it is to say it as if I were Matt Campbell. This team is going to face a lot of adversity.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Nick Marovitz. Thank you so much for making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Be sure to hit subscribe down below so we can prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone State. All right, today we are breaking down the Iowa State versus Cincinnati game. It's going to be a lot of fun. Trust me, we are going to do our best to make this actually a positive experience. We'll talk about first, where is Iowa State right now? Is this the team that Iowa State will be trotting out onto the field for basically the remainder of the season? And what does that mean? Then we'll talk about the positives that came out of this game in the second segment. Though there weren't that many, we should highlight them. All right. We shouldn't completely ignore them as if they didn't happen. And then finally, we're going to talk about the AP poll in today's final segment, but in a different light. So don't go anywhere because that will be that'll be new, and it'll be kind of a good change of pace. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Look, Iowa State falls to Cincinnati 38-30. Ugly game. Very, 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 very ugly game. Not a fun one by any like that. No, I can't even pretend that this was a fun one. If you watched it, I'm sorry. If you didn't, spare yourself. I'm going to be honest. We're going to break down a few different aspects of this and what was so ugly about it here in this first segment. In the first place I want to start is with the tackling, because obviously watching the game was something. Honestly, something I wouldn't even really recommend. But when you look at the box score, a few things stood out to me. The first one being that Cincinnati rushed for 264 yards on 33 carries, 3 touchdowns in there as well. That's an average of 8 yards a rush, if my math is correct. That's pretty bad. That is not ideal, okay? Then it gets actually somehow even worse, because generally when you see a really big number like 264, you imagine they ripped off an 80-yarder. They ripped off some 60-yarder. They ripped off some 40-yarder. Cincinnati's longest rush of the day was 30 yards by Evan Pryor. Then the next longest was 20 by Brendan Sorsby. And then the next longest by Tawi Walker was 17. So we're not exactly looking at a decent run defense and then a few gashes is the best way for me to put that. We're looking at a Cincinnati team that just took it to Iowa State all game long. And the reason I asked this or bring this up is I think it's a good question to ask. Where is Iowa State at right now? This loss could be an indicator of what's to come all season. Remember, Iowa State is not looking at a situation where one or two big guys are, high ankle sprain, 2 to 3 weeks, whatever. I'm not saying that high ankle sprain is 2-3 weeks, but you get what I'm saying. It's not some temporary situation where Iowa State is like, oh, we just got to get through these few games. Iowa State is, for the most part, this is their roster. For the most part, right? Obviously, Cooper out for the season. Obviously, Kyle Conradi could come back, but that's going to be a while, right? Look, this is, I think, the biggest question. Can Iowa State tackle? If Iowa State can't tackle the rest of the season, nothing else matters. You can't give up 264 on the ground and allow 214 through the air and expect to win a lot of games. You just can't. That is right there. I don't know if I'm not going to say it's necessarily poor effort, but whatever was happening out there, it wasn't good. It was not good. We went into this game talking about how the rushing defense wasn't really my main concern. I was definitely more concerned with the secondary, and I stand by that thought process. The idea that since we're down our 2 arguably best corners, probably a little weak in the secondary, probably going to be an area that Cincinnati can exploit. I didn't feel too bad about the run defense. I thought up front. We were going to be able to handle it. I'm kind of blocking those A-B gaps, and our linebackers would flow. I don't think the linebackers necessarily had a huge game. I think they needed to. I stand by that. I don't think that the line, up front, Dom Orange had some impact. I don't think he had a big enough impact when you just see that 264. And it didn't really, it's not one of those where you look at the box score and you say, boy, where'd they find 264 yards? Like they took it to Iowa State. It felt like they had 264 yards. That was ugly. So is this what Iowa State is now? Well, I think the first place you have to look is, are they going to tackle better? If they aren't going to tackle any better, this is the new Iowa State. Not what we thought they were at the start of the season. Right now, this is a different team, and that's not good if you're not going to tackle any better than that. The next place I want to go, I think, is the kicking game. And it's partially decision-making that's going to go into this conversation, because it's going to be a while before Kyle comes back. And when he does come back, you have to wonder, is he at full strength? And, if Iowa State drops a few in a row, does Kyle even come back? I think is a valid question. If it's one of those where he's on the edge of, it's still kind of bugging me, whatever. Because players, I think, will play through it a lot faster. They'll play through it to more pain. They'll play through more pain if Iowa State's in a better position, right? Like pushing for a playoff spot. Iowa State went about this all wrong, I think, with the Kyle Conradi situation. A lot of drives ending up in no points. Too many. I know that Chase Smith is inexperienced. I know that he also missed a kick in this game. I don't think the way that this went was good. And it's not because we missed a kick. It's not about that. It's the decision making. And the biggest decision to me that stands out is the decision to go for it on 4th and 1 inside their 20 or whatever it was, right around the 20, when you're down 9. To me, that's where the problem lies, is that there is decision making that is not, in my opinion, sound. The reason that I think that's a bad decision is because you decided to just kick the PAT on the touchdown prior. If you score out coming out of halftime and you go for 2 to now make it an 8-point game, I have absolutely no problem with going for that on 4th and 1, right? And Cincinnati got the stop. I'm not going to say don't run the QB sneak there, because I think that worked for Iowa State, obviously, all season long. I have no problem with that necessarily, but you have to kick the field goal there if you kick the PAT prior. By kicking the PAT prior, you are now saying, all right, we're within 10. If we kick a field goal and we score a touchdown, we have the lead. That is what happens when you kick the PAT. When you go for 2, if you miss it, you're a PAT or you're a field goal and a touchdown away from a tie. If you kick the PAT, that would be 0 points to 1 point. If you make the PAT, you now are within where you can win off a field goal and a touchdown. And if you get the 2-point conversion, you completely shift all of the identities, because you're a touchdown and a 2-point away from tying it. If you go the field goal route or the PAT route, Jiminy Creaminy, like they did, you have to kick the field goal from the 20. So the kicking situation isn't ideal for Iowa State, but I think what's worse is the decision-making that I don't know who made that call. And I'm not going to say it came down to that one specific play. I'm not going to say that, but those kinds of decisions were made throughout the game. A lot of going for it on 4th down, which I thought Iowa State needed to do a few of those times, but a few times maybe not. I want to see a reevaluation of the offensive decision-making, essentially, before next week, because I don't think that was good. I don't. I'm going to stand by my initial take on that. But I do think there were some things that actually did go well for Iowa State, and we'll talk about what those were coming up here in just 1 second. Today's episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined, all right? Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. And I love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. Obviously, as a kinesiology major, I love that. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged and get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level every week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Iowa State did not look good against Cincinnati, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everything was bad. I mean, you can't go 11-1 without dropping one to Cincinnati in early October, is what I always say. The 38-30 final is ugly. And when you dive into how they got to that 38-30 final, you're even more disgusted, I'm sure. But that doesn't mean it was all bad. There were a few things Iowa State did really well. For one, I think the offense was humming. Now, out of the three phases of the game, I can't say that the special teams or that the defense were good. I think I can only say that about the offense. But that being said, the offense was good. I honestly think the offense was solid in this game against Cincinnati. Now, were they perfect? No, they were not. But let's break down what I think made this offense relatively special, right? Relatively speaking. Not quite enough in this one, but really close, actually. And I thought a really good showing from Iowa State. Rocco threw for 314 yards, 2 touchdowns, 30 of 48. Now, is that some crazy number? No, that's just over 60%, 314 yards, but a long of only 20. And I'm going to make the same point that I did with Cincinnati's rushing attack. If you throw for 314 yards and you don't have a long pass, or excuse me, that was a rush of 20. So you don't have a longest pass over 40 yards. That's a good day. That is a good day. That means if you take the longest pass out of Rocco's passing total, he still has 270 yards. Rocco threw the ball really well against Cincinnati. Now, that being said, he threw the ball really well. Yes, I will, because I can already see the comments. I'm going to just kind of caveat that. He did not put the ball in the perfect spot all game long. Okay. I'm just going to get that out there. But he did enough. He did. He threw for 314 yards. Iowa State still rushed for 151 in this game. That's an average of almost 4 yards a carry. Now, it pales in comparison to Cincinnati's 8 yards a carry for sure, but that's still a pretty good showing. A long of 20, you got 38 rushes, and you rushed for 151 yards. That's a pretty good day. I think most games, that's a solid day, especially when you consider Iowa State kind of got away from the rush later in this game. And so they could have probably torched them for a few more, just didn't really work out as far as the game situation goes. And finally, the final bright spot that I'm going to bring up for you is Iowa State's defense, but only in the second half. In the first half, Iowa State gave up 31 points, and I was disgusted. And I think I have every right to feel that way. But in the second half, Cincinnati only scored 7 points, and it was on a nuke. So, like, I don't feel too bad about that. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I actually like what happened in the second half, aside from 82 yards to Caleb Goody. And, I mean, I've been talking about it all weekend long. If you're going to give up an 82-yard touchdown versus a 9 to 10 play, 6.5 minute drive touchdown, I would rather give up the burst every time, every day of the week. The question why is answered with the answer. If you give up one play that goes for 82 yards, that could be just one decision that was incorrect, one slip of the foot that gets one guy wide open, and then a decent throw, and all of a sudden he's to the house. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but that's what can happen, right? You could have one guy who wasn't paying attention, and all of a sudden it's one play and you're gone. If you get beat down on a 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 16 play drive that takes 9 minutes, you're probably kind of getting beat a little bit every single play. So honestly, the way that second half went, like if you erase one play, Iowa State held them to 0 points. And you don't have the 82 yards through the air either. So I actually liked what I saw in the second half from Iowa State's defense. Now I'm going to kind of pivot back and answer the question that I ask myself. Is this the new Iowa State team? I think the second half is what Iowa State is capable of. I think that the defense can play better. I'm not saying that the second half is what we're going to see the rest of the season, because I think it was situational football from Cincinnati. I think they honestly played that about as well as they could have, and that's why they came away with the win. And so that's going to factor into like how well the defense played for sure, but they still did enough in that second half. I think we'll get a lot closer to that second half of football moving forward. And the Iowa State offense was good throughout the game, especially in the second half, obviously. Now, 15 points in the first. It's not like it was 15-15. They scored 30 points total, 15 in the first half. So it's not like either half was necessarily significantly better, okay? I just think throughout the course of the game, the offense was good. If you can score 30 points a game, you should be winning a lot of games in the Big 12. You should be able to hold teams to 30 or points or less. Now, you gave up 38 to Cincinnati. It's just part of the game. That's just how it goes, right? You didn't get this one. But moving forward, I think we saw enough. I am a little bit frightened of Rocco Becht for a few different reasons. One, for his safety, but two, because I think he might be, as Taylor Mouser said, a psycho. I don't know how you take a hit like that and come back into the game and still play really well. No interceptions for Rocco, which is, if you would have told me he didn't have any interceptions in this one, but one against Arizona, I would have been shocked, simply because of the fact that he got hit by a freight train in this one. I immediately was like, oh gosh, we are cooked. So huge shout out to Rocco for that. I don't know how he kept his head on him. But this Rocco and what he's capable of and what we have in the receiver room, Chase Sowell, 5 receptions for 58 yards. Brett Eskelson, 8 receptions for 105 yards. Xavier Townsend, 6 receptions for 50 yards. Your top 3 receivers were receivers, and they went for over 200 yards between the 3 of them. Now, Iowa State did get away from the tight ends, and I think we've all been asking, should Iowa State be focused on the tight ends? I wonder after this one if maybe we do kind of go back to the tight end focus here. Bramer only had 48 and Burkle only had 12, 2 receptions for 12 yards. Probably wouldn't hurt to focus back in on those guys and just kind of see if the offense can get back to what they were. But it's nice to know that the wide receivers can get open. You can get over 200 yards of production from your top 3 wide receivers. That's a good feeling. So I don't want to say that this Iowa State team is completely toast. A lot of, obviously my mentions on Twitter at Nick_Marv, like, is this still the number 1 team in the Big 12? No, this is not the number 1 team in the Big 12. They are way too beat up to be the number 1 team in the Big 12. But this is not, I'm not ready to close the door on this being a Big 12 contender. Now, you look, they didn't lose 5 games on Saturday. They lost 1 game. And it's easy to be pessimistic moving forward because, like I said, this isn't a 1-game situation. Like, a lot of the injuries that Iowa State is facing are long-term. So they're going to have to fix or play with those and fix what they did against Cincinnati, play that better the rest of the season. But they have talent. They have offensive firepower. They can play defense. We saw it in the second half. The kicker situation just needs to be figured out, really. And I think Iowa State is still in a competitive situation, which is, I think, partially why they are still ranked. I know, shocking. We'll talk about that coming up here in just 1 second. This episode is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Me personally, dude, Cafe Diem in Ames. Are you kidding me? One of my favorite spots to go down, get some studying done, get a nice coffee, maybe a little sweet treat, maybe treat myself depending on how the week had gone so far. It's the heart of the community, honestly, for Ames. And it's one of the cafes that everyone always recommends. And if you haven't been, you kind of have to go. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I personally love FanDuel because it gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games because I am just never in time for kickoff. So doing it live is probably the best bet for me. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Now, during my rant after the game, I talked about Iowa State probably was not going to be ranked after that display of football. I was wrong. For once in my life, I am pleasantly surprised to be incorrect. Iowa State falls to 22 in the latest AP poll. And I'm going to be honest, based on what we saw, I know that the potential is there for Iowa State. I do. And that's why I don't have a problem with this. But based on the potential, or what I saw on the field on Saturday, and how the AP poll should work, I don't think this Iowa State team should be ranked. I have no problem saying that. The AP top 25 currently looks like this: Ohio State at 1, Miami at 2, Oregon at 3, Ole Miss 4, Texas A&M 5. I have no problem with that. And honestly, I don't really have a problem. I don't have a lot of room to speak on the rest of the AP poll right now, because Iowa State I don't even think they should be in it. But Oklahoma comes in at 6, Indiana 7, Alabama 8, Texas Tech 9, Georgia 10. So we do have a Big 12 team in the top 10, which is kind of cool, kind of nice. When Iowa State beats them in the Big 12 championship, it'll look really good. LSU comes in at 11, Tennessee 12, Georgia Tech 13, Mizzou 14, Michigan 15. We've got Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, at 16. And if anything, like, that is a great sign for Iowa State. Let's not get too crazy here. You got Illinois at 17, BYU at 18, Virginia at 19, Vandy at 20. Arizona State comes in at 21, ahead of Iowa State at 22, Memphis at 23, USF 24, and Florida State 25. So on the entire poll, you've got Texas Tech, you've got BYU, you've got Arizona State, you've got Iowa State from the Big 12. Still that 14 mark is what I'm seeing here. I'm not even going to argue with this. I think the biggest point of this AP poll is that Iowa State has gained some level of respect. Now, is it a ton? No, it's not. But it doesn't really need to be, because I think if Iowa State fell off the poll this week, I don't think they could make it back into the top 12. I don't think they could. It'd be impossible. Can they fight their way back into the top 12 here? Yes, I do. I do think so, because you're going to face a currently ranked ASU and a currently ranked BYU. I feel like a respected Kansas team and a TCU team that is knocking on the door for sure. Now, is TCU really, really good? That remains to be seen. But I think they're right. They might be ranked when we face them, because we've got a few weeks until that happens, about a month or whatever. So I think Iowa State could, if they dominate BYU by 60 points, dominate Arizona State by 50 points, and they beat TCU by 30, they could be in the top 12 even without a Big 12 championship win. I think that this knockdown to 22 is the best case scenario for Iowa State. And to talk a little bit more on the disrespect portion, it is not disrespect at all. This is truly this. I think we're looking at the, hey, Iowa State is still a good team. Iowa State is a good program. They had a bad day against Cincinnati. We're obviously not going to keep them, at 14. Need to drop them down, but still a good program. Still, there's something there. And I don't think that, 3 years ago, had Iowa State been 5-0, which obviously they were last season, before I think they lost at 7-0 to Texas Tech, if I remember correctly. But last season or 2 seasons ago, let's say Iowa State's 5-0 and they lose in the way that they did to a Cincinnati team, I don't think they would have been ranked. So I think that Iowa State is starting to get more street cred, starting to get more kind of credibility, but respect. And that's a good feeling. Now you got to back it up, right? If you lose to Cincinnati and then you drop this one at Colorado, and then maybe you get an upset, but you lose 2 of your next 3, you just kind of sputter your way to the end of the season. Like, yeah, you're really missing a lot in the secondary for sure, but I don't think that that's going to look good on Iowa State's, like, can we trust Iowa State radar? Like on that meter of how good is Iowa State week to week, you're going, this is still a very important remainder of the season. This is still a very important next few weeks for Iowa State and something they have to get right. You can't drop 3 of your next 4 games and expect to be treated like a top team in the Big 12 or in college football. I mean, this loss alone was enough for me to be like, maybe everything I said up until this point was incorrect. But I'm not going to say that, because I do think that there were flashes in this game that was enough for me to say, all right, they had a bad half. Things got out of hand. You lost 1 game. Any given Saturday, we'll be back next week. That's kind of how I feel at this point. It was very, very ugly. It was ugly. It was actually maybe the ugliest thing I've ever seen. How are we walking out of bounds on the final play? We haven't even talked about that. I don't even think we're going to. How does that happen? What was the goal there? What was the thought process? I'd love to know. It was not pretty. But I think in there, even the AP poll, and I don't think they should be doing this, but I do think the AP poll sees, like, Iowa State's a good program. They dropped one against Cincinnati, who is a good team, still unranked, but just really knocking on the door. I saw some of they're receiving votes. Iowa State's a good team. They have potential. We saw in this game that they are able to throw the ball, to run the ball. They can score points. If they can just not go a whole half basically without playing defense, I think they'll win a lot of games. So don't close the door on Iowa State yet. It's not over. It's not ideal. It is not a good spot for Iowa State to be in, but it's not over by any stretch of the imagination. Thank you guys so much for making it to this point in the video. Be sure to hit subscribe down below if you haven't already. Helps us prove that it is, in fact, a Cyclone State. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_Marv if you disagree with me. I'd love to hear what your thoughts were after that showing, for sure. That being said, until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.